There once lived a sister and brother named Hansel and Gretel. Hansel and Gretel's father was a woodcutter. Each day, Hansel and Gretel would play at the edge of the forest and wait for their father to finish work. One day, Hansel and Gretel grew tired of playing at the edge of the forest. "Let's take a short walk inside the forest," suggested Hansel. Gretel agreed. Hansel and Gretel began exploring the forest. "Look at that lovely white bird!" shouted Gretel. "I want to follow it, but I am afraid we will lose our way." Hansel pulled a piece of bread from his pocket. "I will leave a trail of crumbs behind us so that we may find our way back." They followed the bird, and Hansel dropped a crumb after each step. Soon, Hansel and Gretel noticed the sun was setting. "Let's return home," said Gretel. Hansel and Gretel turned around and began to follow the trail of crumbs. After only a few steps, the crumbs disappeared. "An animal has eaten our trail!" exclaimed Hansel. "We're lost!" cried Gretel. The two of them walked and walked until they came upon a cottage made of candy. The hungry children ran toward it. They licked the sugary windows and took bites out of its gingerbread bricks. "Delicious!" Gretel shouted. "Sweet!" agreed Hansel. Just then, the two heard stomping and grunting. "Who is eating my house?" a scary-looking woman called out. "We are Hansel and Gretel," they replied. "We are sorry for eating your house, but we are very hungry." The woman raised one eyebrow. "Hungry? So am I. Please join me for dinner." The woman pushed the children inside. In her house, Hansel and Gretel were served a feast. They devoured pancakes with syrup, frosted cakes, caramel apples, and plenty of milk. By nightfall, the two children were so stuffed they could hardly move. "Gotcha!" shouted the woman as she pushed Hansel and Gretel into a cage. "Now, when you're fat enough, you'll be perfect to eat." Hansel and Gretel couldn't believe their ears. The next morning, the lady asked Hansel to stick his finger out of the cage. She grabbed it and squeezed. "Getting fatter," smiled the witch, and tossed more food inside the cage. Hansel and Gretel watched the wicked lady fumble around the kitchen all day. That night, the witch asked to feel Hansel's finger once more. "Almost ready," the lady exclaimed. "Why does she squeeze your finger when she can just look at you?" Gretel asked. Hansel's eyes widened. "I think she cannot see well," he whispered, getting a clever idea. Hansel found a thin bone that resembled a finger. The next morning, when the witch asked to feel Hansel's finger, he held out the bone. "Much too thin," she frowned, serving Hansel more food. For many days, Hansel held out the thin bone instead of his finger. The witch was stumped. "I'm going to eat you anyway," decided the witch one day. She began preparing to cook, bumping into things around the kitchen. "May I help you cook?" Gretel asked, getting an idea of her own. "Cooking will go faster if there are two of us," said Gretel. "True," said the lady as she unlocked the cage. "Now, put your brother in the oven," the witch ordered Gretel. "Are you sure a person can fit inside the oven?" Gretel asked. Of course, laughed the witch, squeezing herself inside. You see, it's easy. Gretel slammed shut the oven door, trapping the witch inside. She unlocked Hansel's cage, and the two of them ran all the way home. From that day forward, Hansel dropped rocks instead of breadcrumbs on the trail, and they never got lost again.